Alrighty, folks, it is fight week here on Keeping the G Real podcast, UFC 281 preview coming for you guys right here. Israel Adesanya versus Alex Pereira. Interesting middleweight championship fight. Tough fight to call. We're actually going to go through the whole entire card this time. I'm actually really excited for this card, top to bottom. Some really good fights, 2 championship fights, and then a fight at 155 pounds that could decide who's going to fight for the title next. Rumor is Conor McGregor's coming back, which everyone makes a big deal out of. I mean, it is more fun and interesting, in my opinion, when he is in the mix, and we'll talk about that a little bit later. But we have Israel Adesanya versus Alex Pereira in the main event. We got Weili Zhang taking on Carla Esparza for the women's strawweight title. And then we obviously have Dustin Poirier versus Michael Chandler to figure out, get to the bottom who's probably going to be a number one contender, depending on what happens. Let's just get right into it. First fight on the card at 205, Carlos Ulberg, hailing from New Zealand, taking on Mikael Negumereanu. How do you say that? Negumereanu, who is fighting out of Romania. The Romanians have some interesting last names. I play FIFA every now and then, and a lot of times I always pick up these Romanian guys with some interesting last names where they put the letters together in some of them. But Carlos Ulberg, the Black Jag, taking on Nicolae Negumereanu, however you say that. Interesting stylistic matchup. Carlos Ulberg coming in with a 7-1 record. 4 KOs, 1 submission, 1 decision. And, Carlos Ulberg, big kickboxer, 6'4", big, strong, athletic, fast guy. And he basically fights all of his fighting around his kickboxing. Like I said, long and athletic. Really loves to kick. Oftentimes, I find that he uses a lot of his lead kicks, lead round and lead leg kicks to chop people's legs down, kind of beat their legs up. He's got pretty good punching speed. He has good transitional striking from when he's in striking range and distance range and crashes into the clinch and throws a lot of good elbows. He's an aggressive striker. He's always looking for the knockout. And he has a pretty decent tool bag. I don't think he really mixes his strikes all that well together consistently. But he can, throw to the body with head low with all of his punching combinations, whether he's, throwing 1 and 2 punch combos, or whether he's throwing his kicks. He can go from the head all the way down to the ankles. I love he does have this one move that he utilizes a lot, whether he's implementing the first engagement or he's stepping off. He throws these really cool lead glancing and check glancing hooks. They come off like they're going to be kind of like an overhand, and it glances into a hook. He has a lot of success with that shot, especially against a lot of guys who don't really use a lot of head movement. I would say one of his deficiencies is he kind of is a linear fighter and plots forward. Doesn't have the best footwork. And you can really take advantage of him if you cut angles and move out of the way and, pivot around him off to the sides, cut that distance because he's got a really long reach. He's a pretty big guy for this weight class. Takedown defense, haven't really seen it all that much. He's kind of been beating a lot of these dudes on the feet. He's never been in any really positions that I seen in the tape to where he really had to defend, the takedowns. Not a lot of guys shoot on him. A lot of guys have trouble gauging the distance shooting on him. So it's easy to see. It's interesting to see what's going to happen in this fight. The tape I watched on his opponent, Nicolae, wrestling, bases all of his fighting around his wrestling attack. And he's decently well-rounded, but where he's really good is his chain wrestling. What I mean by chain wrestling, for the people that don't really know, is a lot of times in wrestling, although you're very good, it's not always your first attack, whether you shoot for a single leg or you shoot for a double leg or you try to get some sort of a drop or a trip or suplex or however you decide to attack people. It's usually the second or the third attempt that, usually secures the takedowns. I mean, he could be a pretty relentless wrestler at times, really chains and keeps going for his takedowns. He doesn't really give up on them. Doesn't get, seems to not get too perturbed when he doesn't really land his takedown at first. He's pretty persistent with them. I would say his deficiencies are, I really think his fight IQ is not that great. I think he strikes when he shouldn't and doesn't grapple when he should. And I think he's a little undersized for this division. I think in this stylistic matchup, he's really going to need to put those wrestling shoes on and be consistent and be early with his takedowns against a guy like Olberg, who's just really dangerous on the feet. I think another deficiency is his reaction times in terms of his actual athleticism are pretty slow. His setups and his footwork aren't really all that great. He telegraphs a lot of his strikes, and in my opinion, he telegraphs a lot of his takedowns. I like Carlos Ulberg in this fight to win by TKO. I don't think that, considering the how decently Ulberg uses his power and length and his range, I think his opponent. I'm saying his opponent. I feel bad because the guy, I can't even pronounce the guy's last name. We'll just call him Nicolay. I think he's going to, since he has such bad footwork and he telegraphs a lot of shots, I think it's going to be hard for him to get in on a takedown. And I think even if he does get in on his hips, I think Ulberg's shown that he has pretty decent takedown defense. And if he doesn't wear Ulberg down, I think Ulberg's going to just pick him apart and win the decision. And I also think that when I said consistent, I think sometimes Nicolau just decides not to wrestle sometimes. I think that's why I say I think he has a low IQ. I've seen some of his fights where he clearly could take some of his opponents down and he just decides not to. He better come to wrestle in this fight. The odds on this fight are minus 120 Ulberg, plus 100 Nicolau. This is a classic striker versus grappler matchup. But I like Carlos Ulberg, his punch and power, his skill set, his ability to control the distance. I just think he's going to be a little bit too physically imposing on Nicolau, and it's going to allow him to, land his shots. He's an accurate striker, and Nicolau really doesn't move his head all that much. So I like Ulberg to win this fight, either by TKO or by decision. So Julio Arce versus Montel Jackson. This is going to be a pretty interesting fight. Another one of those fights where the styles kind of mesh pretty interestingly enough. Julio Arce is a pretty decent fighter, and he's actually beaten a lot of good guys. He's coming in at a plus 170 underdog to Montel Jackson's minus 200. Julio Arce, 33 years old, sporting an 18-5 record. He's pretty well-rounded, 5 KOs, 5 subs. He's got 5 decisions. He's more of a pressure-style boxer. He has solid boxing with a pretty decent boxing tool bag. He makes a lot of straight punches and hooks to the head and to the body. He has a 95% takedown defense rate, which is really fucking good, especially in that division. And he has a solid jabs to the body and head, and he really likes to fight behind that jab. He also has a pretty solid check hook that he does a really good job turning and pivoting out of the way and resetting on guys so he could put more return shots behind them. Solid footwork, solid counters. He's just a really solid striker. And he mixes in low kicks every now and then with his boxing, and I just think he has pretty good volume and pressure. Does a really good job corralling guys around the cage and just putting those medium punching power shots on guys. 1, 2, 3 punch combinations. And he's a decent grappler, too. I just think he's a very well-rounded fighter. Montel Jackson, sporting a record of 11-2 with 6 KOs, 11 submissions, and 4 decisions. Little versatile. He has a more of a straightforward approach to his boxing. He's a little more on the athletic side and uses mostly straight punches. His offensive grappling is where he really excels. But I do like his boxing fundamentals, and he actually has some pop on the end of his punches. It's a little bit interesting to see these two, if they decide to stay on the feet together. It's more of a technical style boxer with a little bit of a deeper tool bag versus a guy that's got decent technical, patient punching, power punching boxing. This is another interesting fight in terms of the grappling for me. I'm interested to see if Montel Jackson looks to get the takedown, because Julio Arce, no slouch on the ground. He's got 5 submissions to his record. But I think what I think is going to happen in this fight, and I talked about the notable wins. Julio Arce's had an up and down career. I feel like he's one of those guys that's got a pretty good record, but you feel like when he's going to take that next step, sometimes he has to take that. He hasn't really taken that next step. He's beaten Andre Ewell, Julian Erosa, Dan Ige, Daniel Tamer. He's beaten some good guys. I mean, Montel Jackson, the only guy he's really beaten is Brian Kelleher, a guy that kind of stands forward, square, not really all that technical. The question for me is, does Montel Jackson decide to wrestle? In my opinion, he's kind of a slow starter and get behind on the scorecards in a lot of his fights. I'd really like to see him push the pace here and mix his boxing up with his wrestling, and I think he could have success there. But I do like Julio Arce to win this fight because Montel Jackson is such a slow starter. And I think that since Arce is not a slouch, I think if he could get up on the point cards in rounds 1 and 2, I think it'll be tough for Montel Jackson to mount a comeback. I like Arce by decision. He's just a solid, composed pressure boxer. He's got really good boxing defense and takedown defense. Jackson could make it a little more interesting if he decides to grapple, but I really don't think he will. And like I said, I think he'll fall behind and get behind on the scorecards. I just think he needs to be a little more aggressive. I mean, it's anyone's fight if Jackson decides to be aggressive and not have a slow start out the gate. But I like Julio Arce to edge out a decision here. And like I said, Julio Arce is the underdog in this fight. So. And another solid fight. I really don't think this one is as interesting as some of the other fights on the card, but we have Ultimate Fighter winner Mike Trizano taking on Suwoo Choi, who's been around for a little bit in the UFC here. Mike Trizano sporting a 9-3 record, 2 KOs, 2 subs, got 5 decisions. He's a mixed bag fighter. I mean, he's mostly fights behind his jab and his boxing, but he has pretty decent offensive wrestling and a solid top game. He's going to look to mix his strikes and mix his wrestling shots in. Against Suwoo Choi, who comes in at 10-5. Suwoo Choi is an interesting fighter, tall and long for this division. He's got like 75 inches of reach. Great nickname too, by the way, Sting. Suwoo Choi's got solid striking, solid kicks with a really good teep kick. He actually likes to spam it a lot. He likes to spam his teep kick. Kind of uses his teep kick to kind of reset exchanges and just keep guys forward because he likes to lunge in with pretty decent straight punching combinations. He likes to fight behind his jab. He's got a solid cross, and he actually got underrated speed behind his punches. He's got pretty decent blitzes too, and I think he likes to use that keep to just gauge the distance of where guys are going to be, and he comes forward. Problem with his blitzes, though, he can get a little carried away with his pin blitzes. It's kind of like a video game. He's just like 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2. But he does a pretty good job in the clinch as well. He's got really good clinch control, got pretty good elbows and knees. Does a good job throwing strikes as he exits the clinch. Does a pretty good job transitioning from close striking range and into the clinch range, getting in and out. The problem with Choi, and where I think this could be a difference maker of the fight, is, like I said, he could be a little bit too aggressive. He definitely lowers his defenses at times and doesn't really use a lot of head movement. He's been hit often. He's pretty durable, but, he really doesn't move his head. Fights a lot of times where he gets in these exchanges where he kind of doesn't really look when he throws punches. In fights best going forward, he really lacks footwork and countering, doesn't really throw a lot of feints. He just is a from the chamber striker. Another thing is he can be taken down. From what I've seen in a lot of his fights, he's bad at timing when guys come in on shots. He's physically pretty bad at actually, doesn't have the greatest hips. Like guys get in on his hips, it kind of just bowl him over. Trizano, like I said, Ultimate Fighter winner. Trizano is a guy, to me, at times hasn't shown the best fight IQ. Definitely should grapple a little bit more. I do think he has the advantage with he's a little bit more technical in the boxing, and I think that he could definitely secure takedowns on Choi. Question is, does he? I think Trizano in this fight, this is one of those fights where a lot of people are saying like these guys are fighting for their careers. So look for Trizano to put in a more well-rounded game in this fight. I think he looks to take advantage of Choi's takedown defense and secures unanimous decision. This fight could be really close. If Choi can stop some of the takedowns, it's anyone's fight. But I do like Trizano to edge him out. And I think Trizano is the favorite in this fight. No, I think Trizano is the underdog in this fight. I'm not sure. But if Mike Trizano comes and fights the way he should, fights the best of his ability, he should edge out a unanimous decision victory over choice. So I like Mike Trezano in this fight. Yeah, bet you a lot of you people didn't know Mike Trezano was an Ultimate Fighter winner, but step it up, kid. So one of the fights I'm looking forward to, because I love Karolina Kowalkiewicz versus Silvana Gomez Juarez. So this fight is going to be a fun one, in my opinion, because both girls like to stand and strike. Kowalkiewicz fighting out of Poland, as everyone knows, because she's a fan favorite. This is a 115-pound fight. Silvana Gomez Juarez fighting out of, I'm not sure. I didn't write where she fought. I don't know if she's actually American or she's fighting out of Mexico, or I'm not sure. I didn't write it down. But both girls 37 years old. Karolina Kowalkiewicz 13-7, 1 KO, 3 submissions, 9 decisions. Preferred styles, Muay Thai. Just a fun fighter. Like, I feel like everyone who watches Kowalkiewicz likes Kowalkiewicz. She's not the most athletic fighter. Doesn't have the most power, but she's just tough. For most of her career, durable, and we'll get to that. Got a pretty solid tool bag. Accurate, aggressive striker. She can fight forward and backwards, but she's a very versatile Muay Thai fighter. She fights really good at striking range, close range, clinch range. Primarily boxes first. She's got more of a hybrid Muay Thai style. And I'll explain later as I go on. I throw the word around hybrid sometimes, and I'll explain it more to Izzy because I think it applies to Izzy a lot more. When I say a hybrid kickboxer, I say hybrid because there's a lot of different ways once you start adding the kicks, the knees, and the elbows into striking. There's a lot of ways you could approach that. From what levels you attack people to your stance to the type of techniques you implement. Karolina Kowalkiewicz is a pretty good Muay Thai kickboxer, but she fights primarily with her boxing and mixes in her clinch work, her knees and kicks. So she's more of I call her a versatile Muay Thai kickboxer. She can do a little bit of everything, but she likes to fight behind her boxing. But she's got good clinch striking, really good elbows, and she throws a pretty good volume. She's a very accurate striker. And when she starts to hurt girls, she really pours it on. And throughout most of her career, she's had a really, really good cardio. She can fight 3 rounds. She can fight 5 rounds. I would say the cons for her, she's fought a lot. You know, she's 13-7, had a lot of kickboxing matches. She's got a lot of miles on her. She's 1-6 or 1-5 in her last 6, but she's fought good fighters in all of her losses. She's been fighting the cream of the crop. Some of the other cons, she will trade shots. She's willing to trade shots. Not super explosive and athletic, like I said. Not really that great of a grappler, even though she just submitted Felice Herrig. Notable wins for her: Felice Herrig. She's beaten. I think she's beaten Rose Namajunas, Randa Marcos. She's beaten Randa Marcos. For Silvana Gomez Juarez, she's got 7 KOs, 2 subs, 2 decisions. So this fight's going to be primarily contested on the feet. But what's interesting about the fight is these two girls approach striking totally differently. Kowalkiewicz comes in with the tool bag, the accuracy, the footwork, the cardio, and just a high striking IQ, whereas Suarez is aggressive, throws moderate to low volume combinations with punch and power. She got solid leg kicks. The only cons is pretty much everything else. I mean, she kind of is just a power boxer, which is, why I like Kowalkiewicz in this fight. I know Kowalkiewicz is coming off a submission win. Before that, she lost 5 straight. But I really think that in a 3-round fight, if Kowalkiewicz brings her best, even at this age, even with her miles, I think she can outpoint Silvana Gomez Juarez. So I'm taking Karolina Kowalkiewicz to pick her apart, use her leg kicks, maybe push her up against the fence, make the fight dirty, and win a decision. I could see Gomez landing a couple tough shots and maybe hurting Kowalkiewicz and maybe getting like an early KO if she gets on her quick. But Silvana Gomez is getting a serious jump in competition here. I think people forget how good Karolina Kowalkiewicz is. So again, I'll take Kowalkiewicz by unanimous decision. All right. Stylistically, one of the wildest matchups tonight. Matt The Steamroller, Frivola from the USA, 32 years old. He's sporting a 9-3-1 record with 2 KOs, 3 submissions, 4 decisions. In his preferred style, he's kind of a meat and potato styles fighter, but he mostly wrestles, fighting Otman Azaitza, who was on a rampage for a little while, knocking everyone the fuck out. Really fantastic fighter, 13-0, 9 KOs, 3 submissions, 1 decision, preferred style, kickboxing. So for Matt Frivola, he's just a solid, and I mean a low-tier, solid MMA fighter for me. I never thought he was really all that great. Like I said, a meat and potatoes kind of fighter. He's just like, okay at everything, and then he's pretty decent at grappling. He should look to wrestle in this fight, because in my opinion, that's his only way to victory is if he can wrestle fuck Azaitzar. Cons for Frivola, he's not really athletic, very slow striker, just slow in his setups, telegraphical punches, just physically kind of a stuck-in-the-mud fighter. His notable wins are Jalen Turner, Luis Pena, nothing really too crazy. I really think that this is a bad matchup for him and Otman Azaitzar. Azaitzar, like I said, 9 KOs, 3 submissions, just a finisher. Pros for Azaitzar, he's just got lightning speed in all aspects in terms of physical movement and striking, especially his boxing. His boxing combinations are just snappy, and he changes levels. Really good combinations, mix it up from the head to the body. He's got really good feints, and he's really explosive off his feints and launches into really nice combos. Really good pivoting, stepping off, and just blasting dudes from all different angles. And he's got solid takedown defense. When you see guys get down and try to take him down, they struggle. He's got really good hips. I would assume that at this point in his career, he probably doesn't have the best actual ground game, but I really don't think Frivola could take him down. I would say cons for Azaitzar is overall grappling. Hasn't really been tested all that much yet. Like I said, he's 13-0. His only good wins are Kama Worthy and Timu Paklin, even though they were like fantastic. I like Azaitzar by TKO or unanimous decision. He's just too fast. The striking gap is just way too much. Athleticism is way too much. Just solid hips. He'll stay upright, and the boxing will overwhelm Frivola. And Frivola's been knocked out a handful of times already in his career. I just think this is going to be too much. I think if you're going to place your bets this weekend on a possible knockout, this might be the fight. Frivola doesn't really move his head. He plots forward. He's not fast. I just really think he's going to get pieced up and creased up here by Otman Azaitzar. So Otman Azaitzar, first or second round TKO or unanimous decision. By the way, disclaimer, Azaitzar hasn't fought in a little bit. I really don't think that will matter all that much. A lot of times with these like high-level striker guys, it's like riding a fucking bike. He'll come back and just fucking throw the bungalows around. It'll be a wrap. So I like Azaitzar over Frivola. Andre Petrosky versus Wellington Turman. 2 interesting prospects here. 2 totally different fighters, in my opinion. I'm not super high on either of these guys. I know a lot of people that are. So I know some dudes that really like Petrosky. I know some dudes that really like Wellington Turman. I'm not wicked high on either of them. But the contrast in this fight in terms of how they approach fighting are both really, really interesting. Andre Petrosky fighting out of the USA, 8-1, 31 years old. Pretty big at 185, you know. I mean, he's more of a compact guy at 6 foot. He's got 4 KOs, 4 subs. He prefers to brawl, power boxing, power grappling, really freakishly strong. A very physical, strong fighter with really good punching power. He has a really heavy top game, and he's a solid grappler. When he gets on top of guys, he's one of those guys where when he gets on top of guys, he's really heavy, has solid ground and pound. He's an underrated submission artist, so he kind of looks to use like a lot of looping punches and brawl his way into grappling exchanges and take guys down. He can get a little sloppy with the boxing at times. Like I said, the punches can come a little bit loopy. He throws like a lot of windmill overhands. But I think his sure physicality sometimes can overwhelm some of his opponents. He has some notable wins over Phil Hawes and Eric Enders. Just one of those guys, like I said, that could really overwhelm you with the power volume and the physical, just the sheer physicality of how he operates in the cage. Just a shrewd operator. He just comes forward and just fucking lets it fly. Fighting against Wellington Turman, who's younger at 26 years old, more fights, 18-5, 4 KOs, 8 submissions, 6 decisions, fights mostly with kickboxing and Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. He's got really solid Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. He's got 8 submissions, but he's pretty well-rounded. He's got decent kickboxing. He's got decent body lock and trips. He likes to use trips and body locks to get guys to the ground. He fights more of a linear fighting style. He comes forward with not looping punches, very straight punches, not really a whole lot of volume, like just 1, 2, likes to mix in the leg kick, sometimes throws the high kick in there. And I think he's not as aggressive as he needs to be with his striking at times. His reaction and defensive striking is so bad, in my opinion. He's just slow, and the lack of volume makes it so that, he's taking a lot of hits from guys, and I think his cardio is a little bit suspect, and I really don't think he has really good punching power in his hands. He was getting his ass whooped by Misha Serkinov, which most dudes get their ass whooped by Misha Serkinov, but Serkinov was beating his fucking ass for like the first 2 rounds, and he somehow pulled out a magical like fucking arm bar and won against him. And his only other notable win is Sam Alvey, which Sam Alvey is, he's just okay. So this, from a striking standpoint, this is just, power brawler versus, more of a linear style fighter. And I think the fact that Wellington Turman doesn't really use a lot of footwork, doesn't move out of the way, has terrible defense, I really think that he can't compete with the sheer physicality of Andre Petroski. I'm not really high on either of these guys. I like Petroski overall. The blend of his roundedness and his power will just probably be too much. He's going to be super physical in this fight, just overpower Turman. Turman can be overpowered physically, taken down. I think Petroski wins by unanimous decision or TKO. So this fight here is probably the fight that is probably going to be the hardest to predict in this whole entire fight card. Not because the fight is going to be relatively all that close, but because both of these girls' fighting styles could possibly be implemented to their fullest, and it's the weakness of each girl. Erin Blanchfield versus Molly McCann, the fan favorite Molly McCann. Cold-blooded Erin Blanchfield, only 23 years old, sitting here at 9-1, 2 KOs, 2 submissions, 5 decisions. I feel like she probably got those 2 KOs before she got to the UFC because she's not really a good striker. We'll get to that. But high-level Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu and offensive grappling. I picked against her a couple times against a couple bigger, more physically imposing women that she's fought. She's beaten Miranda Maverick, who is a beast of a wrestler. And she out-grappled Miranda Maverick, took down J.J. Aldrich, beat Kay Hansen. She's got really good offensive and defensive wrestling, defensive Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. It doesn't matter where the fight goes. She does a really good job taking girls down, controlling girls, especially along the fence. She gets top position, gets your back. She's going to submit you unless your defense is really good. But her cons, poor striking. Her boxing's actually really bad in my opinion. And she kind of just spams kicks and just gauges distance with like really crappy kicks just to get in close, and shoots for her takedowns. And she doesn't really look all that comfortable in a lot of exchanges. If she gets into firefights with girls, her defense goes out the window. And I really think that like all her fundamentals in terms of her striking just really need to be worked on. Luckily, she's 23 years old. And when you're this good at grappling, in my opinion, your future's bright at 23 years old. I don't know who she trains with, but I feel like if she gets in the right camp, develop those striking skills, and even if she could just develop like, a decent jab, just learn some basics, fundamental combinations, have good enough striking to where it's easier for her to where she wants to get and set up shots, cut off angles on girls, and get them against the fence. Like, I just think that if she can, her striking right now is probably like a 2. If she could get it to like a 5 or a 6 by the time she's 30, like she's got a little bit of time. I really think that would just help her. I think she'd be a high level fighter if she can just striking up to be respectable. Because her offensive grappling is that good. Like I said, she's had some good wins especially the one against Miranda Maverick was impressive because you see Amanda Maverick, she's a hulk of a chick, really good offensive wrestler, really nasty, tough, and mean, and she grapple fucked the shit out of fucking Miranda Maverick, and I wasn't expecting that. On the other hand, Meatball, Molly McCann, the fan favorite, 32 years old, 13-4. Pros for Molly McCann, she got 6 KOs, 7 decisions, preferred style. It's all about the boxing with Molly McCann. She's an aggressive boxer, and I honestly think she's an underrated overall striker. Needs to improve her defense a little bit, though. She gets into exchanges, and it's a little bit of a technical issue and a little bit of being overly aggressive. She's definitely hittable. I feel like she doesn't do the greatest job understanding distance when she lands his punches on girls. She kind of hangs in the pocket all while not defending her face instead of pivoting off or creating distance or continuing to strike. She kind of gets herself into this weird no man's land where girls could definitely, in my opinion, she could just reach out and get donked. But her offensive striking to me is pretty underrated. Fights behind a solid jab and a really good check hook, has a solid cross and a solid right hand overhand. Really mixes up to the body pretty well, especially if she's in close. She likes to step back, blast to the body, come up to the top of the head. She really likes to just, tenderize chicks like the Rocky fucking carcass fucking shit in the fucking freezer. She just bludgeons chicks when she gets them cornered. And she's got really good pressure and solid cardio with her pressure. She comes forward, doesn't let girls off the hook. She got a couple fights where she's piecing girls up and walks them down, and you think the girl's going to skate the round, and she throws just a pressuring spinning back elbow. She got 2 spinning back elbow knockouts. Cons, oddly enough, is her wrestling defense. She's been taken down. She could definitely be taken down in this fight. I think her Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu defense is not all that great. I definitely think she could be submitted. So this is the classic striker versus grappler matchup. Notable wins for Molly McCann. She's beating Hannah Goldie, Ariana Lipsky, Priscilla Cachoeira. This is a tough one because I really think it's a 50-50 fight. I could see Molly McCann getting the jump on her, Blanchfield, early if she's patient. If she's aggressive but patient and doesn't make mistakes, doesn't let her get in on a body lock or get in on her legs, really corrals her and stays, stepping off to the side, pivoting, creating angles, not totally staying in front of her, just letting her hands go. And she could pressure her long enough, consistently enough. I think she can get the jump on Erin Blanchfield and put her away. If Blanchfield can't take her down, Molly McCann's either going to unanimous decision or she's going to knock her the fuck out. However, in these matchups, for people that have never trained or have never even hit anyone or anything like that, never been in a fight, I came up in martial arts being someone that was leaned more towards striking, better at striking. I wrestled when I was younger for a little while, but I got better at grappling as I went on. I had to catch up to my striking. It's when you're good at grappling and someone's not good at grappling, the sheer physicality of your grappling skills makes it so it's a lot easier for you to impose that tact on someone. When you're good enough to take someone and put them on the ground, it just totally changes and flips the playing field, and it's easier for you to take advantage of them. Feel like because of the optics, how striking is implemented, the threat of the takedown, it's harder to knock people out than you think, especially when you're in MMA and the takedowns are involved, especially in these divisions where the girls tend to not knock each other out as much. You're more likely to see a scenario where if you were to say the fight stood on the feet, you're more likely to see Molly McCann maybe not threaten her with a knockout and win a decision than you are to see Molly McCann survive on the ground with Erin Blanchfield. And in these fights, I tend to lean more towards the grapplers because of that. It's just you have less defenses when you're on the ground for a multitude of reasons. The fact that there's no more distance involved is one of them. Erin Blanchfield, if she wanted to, could span kicks and maybe move around the whole entire field and maybe just lose a decision. But if Blanchfield takes McCann down, McCann is most likely boned. So I lean toward Blanchfield this fight, probably by submission or by unanimous decision. But the odds, Molly McCann, in my opinion, is a live dog in this fight. I think the odds are like plus 300 something, almost plus 400 Molly McCann, minus 200 or 300 Aaron Blanchfield. So if you're looking to throw a dog on there, a live dog, and you want to shoot for the stars, don't be scared to pepper Molly McCann by knockout. I just think this is the hardest fight to predict, not because it's going to be close, but I really think it could go either way depending on who's able to impose their style on the other person. But again, I just lean grappling because the grapplers just always have a way of getting it where they want them to get it easier than the strikers have a time putting themselves in position to win. You can run away and shit on the feet. If you have decent defense, you can throw out a lot of stuff and not get put away. There's more maneuverability sometimes in the striking game, especially at this weight class where, the girls kind of don't put each other away as often. But Molly McCann, she's been knocking bitches out. But I do like Blanchfield to win by decision or by submission. So Dominic Reyes versus Ryan Spann. So this is the inverse. This fight is hard to pick, but it's because it'll probably be close because both of these fighters tend to lately fight similar. So for anyone that doesn't know, Dominic Reyes, not a lot of experience in the UFC, but quickly catapulted himself into a title shot by knocking a handful of guys out. Dominic Reyes, 32 years old, coming in at 12-3, 7 KOs, 2 submissions, 3 decisions. He prefers mostly to box. He's really athletic, really fast, long and rangy for this division. He's got really good power punches. When he decides to really bite down on his mouthpiece and hit dudes, they call him the Devastator for a reason. If he hits you clean, he could fucking put anyone out. And he mixes his punching together well with some of his kicks. He's got a really good, powerful cross. He's got a cool little stepping left hook he does when guys try to, dart in or guys try to blitz or rush him. He has a really good stepping off hook, and then he'll follow it up with a cross. Just a really sturdy, athletic, decently rounded fighter. He's got pretty good takedown defense, but he doesn't really use much of his grappling, even though he's got 2 submissions. Notable wins over Chris Weidman, Volkan Oezdemir, OSP, Jared Cannonier. And then I wrote John Jones, and then I wrote JK because I thought he beat John, but they gave John the decision, whatever. But yeah, he went on a nice little run where he was just knocking dudes dead and just sprinted the title and almost took it from John Jones. So, it's pretty impressive what you could do when you get the right stylistic matchups. I never thought Dominic Reyes was that really good of a fighter, he's good, but he's not as well-rounded as some of the guys in the division. I just think for this division, what he does is very effective. His height, his length, his explosiveness, his punch and power, and solid takedown defense. I just think that when he fights the best ability, he fights a patient power punching game, and he just takes what the fight gives him. So, he's a tough dude to beat. Ryan Spann, I think they both fight similarly in terms of their striking approaches. Ryan Spann comes in 20-7, 5 submissions, or 5 KOs with 12 submissions, 3 decisions. So, in my opinion, a lot of times Spann strikes way more than he should grapple, but he's got pretty technical, patient striking. He's got a really good jab, a lightning cross that has pretty good power on it too. But where he's taken a lot of dudes out, he's got a lot of finishes. 7 guillotine chokes. Some of them in standing guillotines. He's really good at clapping in like a palm-to-palm standing guillotine. And if he gets your back, he's got a really good rear naked choke. 5 wins by rear naked choke. Solid Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. Should grapple more, and that's what I put in the cons is I think he should grapple a little bit more, but I don't know if he's going to be able to get in on Dominic Reyes and take him down. Now, if I'm Ryan Spann, it's tough. The striking's going to be really, really close. I think either guy could probably knock each other out. Either guy can get a knockout win, but I think if they stand and fight, they're kind of going to be patient. It could possibly be a boring fight on the feet, try to pick each other apart. Similar fighters, but it's a really tough pick. Because of Reyes' power advantage, and I still think overall Reyes has the athleticism and the speed advantage, I like Reyes in a 3-round fight by unanimous decision. But if Ryan, I think the fight could kind of go either way. Ryan Spann could win a unanimous decision if he gets the fight close enough. I'd like to see Ryan Spann take this fight down and sub him, but Dominic Reyes is going off minus 200 something, and then it's like plus 200 something Ryan Spann. I do think this fight's a little closer than people think. I think the measurables in their approach make it so the fights could be a little more even. Again, I'd like to see Spann, shoot and try to get a takedown on him, because I think if Spann can get on top of him, I think Spann could definitely submit him. Reyes has solid takedown defense, but a lot of these dudes have solid takedown defense, but they're totally different fighters when they actually get put on their back, or someone's in their guard, or someone's on their back. So that'd be a cool little wrinkle if Spann can get it to the floor. But I just think Dominic Reyes, the physicality, and the patience and the fight IQ, where Reyes doesn't do more than he should in a fight. I feel like a lot of times, I think he always comes in with a good game plan and just implements it. But yeah, so I like Dominic Reyes by decision. I think I was saying Ryan Spann on accident, but Dominic Reyes by decision. So one of the fights that I'm looking forward to seeing on this card, Brad Riddell versus Renato Moicano. Moicano is actually on the right, or on the left. Brad Riddell is on the right. Moicano, I think Moicano is an underrated fighter. He comes in 16-5-1 with 5 KOs and 5 submissions. Utilizes pretty good kickboxing skills, really good Brazilian jiu-jitsu skills. Facing Riddell, who's 10-3, who's got decent striking himself, got 9 submissions, prefers to grapple, and has decent boxing. So for Brad Riddell, he's got solid striking. He's more of he usually sits behind his boxing. I think he kind of has decent boxing. At times he can be a little telegraphical, likes to lunge in for some of his punching shots. Decent wrestler, has a lot of submissions to his name. I went and tried to watch more fights of Brad Riddell, and all the stuff I found about him and the stuff that I watched, great name by the way, Quake. I just think he's a good fighter. I think he's got good, solid, well-rounded skills. I don't think it's going to be enough for him to take out Moicano. Moicano's fought a lot of good guys, beaten a lot of good guys. I remember the time he said he was going to take time off or whatever, and they called him and like, oh, can you fight Rafael Dos Anjos on short notice? He's like, sure, gives him everything he could in that fight and a loss. Just crazy. Moicano's underrated. So Moicano doesn't have any KOs, I guess, which is crazy because I've seen him knock a lot of guys down. Going into this, I'm like, man, Moicano has a bunch of KOs, doesn't he? Oh, no. I'm sorry. I fixed that. I wrote down my notes. For some reason, he had 0 KOs, but he actually does have 5 KOs. So that's why I was getting that mixed up. He has 5 KOs, but he does have a lot of a lot of knockdowns. Pretty good striker, and he's a pretty good grappler. His Brazilian jiu-jitsu is really good. If for whatever reason he takes Brad Riddell down, gets on top of him, gets his back. I know Brad Riddell's got 9 subs to his credit, but I really think that if Moicano gets anywhere on top of him, I think it's fucking over. He's got solid kickboxing with solid 1, 2, sometimes 3 punch combinations, mixes up to the body and head. And when he hurts guys, he goes all in and tries to finish them. He's got really good transitions between striking to grappling. Really good at setting up his takedowns along the fence. And I think when guys shoot in on him, he does a really good job snatching up submissions, guillotines, and stuff like that. The only thing I don't like about Renato Moicano is he is willing to get in firefights with guys. And I really don't think he takes his head off the center line all that much. He kind of plots forward, even though he has a pretty decent tool bag. And I think that's where Riddell probably could have success for this fight, make this fight interesting, because Riddell does have pretty good punching power. I think Riddell needs to be patient, try to wade through the punching combination. Moicano just throw straight punches. I just really think, though, that in general, Moicano is better than him at pretty much everything besides the punching power aspect. I do like Moicano. I know Moicano is the favorite, but I'll take Moicano in this fight. I just think it's not a great matchup for Riddell. I just think as long as Moicano fights patiently, and his defense is pretty decent, that he should be able to take advantage of Brad Riddell pretty much wherever the fight goes, in my opinion. So Renato Moicano. I like Renato Moicano by unanimous decision in this fight. So, the Hangman, Dan Hooker versus the up-and-comer Claudio Puelles. So, Puelles fighting out of Peru. They call him the Prince of Peru. Really doesn't have a lot of wins that are notable on his record. I think they're kind of throwing him in the fire on this fight. But we'll see. His only notable win is against Clay Guida. He's coming in here 13-2. He doesn't have any KOs. 7 submissions, which we'll talk about that. 4 decisions. Preferred style submission grappling. But he's going up against one of the better fighters in this division, Dan Hooker, 21-11. And don't let the record fool you. I know he's got 11 losses. He's got 10 KOs, 7 submissions, 4 decisions. Preferred style kickboxing. Dan Hooker has fought all the best dudes in this division pretty much. He's got wins over Hawk Paras, Felder, Iaquinta, Vick, Burns, Miller, Mark Chikadze, Ross Pearson. The guys that he's lost to are all high-level fighters, dudes that have held on to the belt, dudes that have gone on to fight for the belt. Hooker's huge for this weight class, standing at 6 foot with almost 76 inches of reach. And Hooker's just a finisher. Really good striking. He's got really good straight punches and really straight good hooks and really good volume. Walks dudes down and he kind of likes to hold his jab out there, like hold it out, kind of like as a measuring stick, to size guys up and figure out how he wants to cut them off so he can land his shots. He's got really solid kicks, especially calf kicks, leg kicks. Really good in the clinch. Does a really good job stepping in on guys with knees, whether it's to the solar plexus, to the head. Really good elbows. Solid check left hook. Or he's got a solid check leave hook. Doesn't really fight the best going backwards. You can really pressure him a lot and beat him up to the body and get inside on him sometimes. His actual defensive striking in terms of being able to get out of the way and stuff, he kind of just pressure guys and comes forward. He doesn't really take too many steps back. Can't really pivot off defensively, change directions and angles and strike on guys. He's all coming forward, gauging distance, picking his shots. He's got pretty good teep kicks and, likes to throw teeps like to the face. Like I said, he's got a solid calf kick. He's actually got solid offensive Brazilian jiu-jitsu too. Like I said, he's got 7 submissions. He's really long and lanky, long and strong for this division. A lot of guys are his size at these lower weights, and they're just long and not really physically imposing. He's a long, strong guy. He's got all kinds of finishes, whether it's knees, punches. He's taken guys down and TKO'd them. He's submitted guys. He's got a really solid guard. I just think he's a really well-rounded fighter. The only cons for him is, for a dude that's as long as him, like I said, not only is he not great at maneuvering defensively, his striking defense in terms of his head movement and stuff, he could really get hit and beat up to the body. He was really durable for a while, but he got into some serious fights where he took so much damage. And that fight with Edson Barboza, I went back and watched it a while back. It was almost making my stomach hurt because he just was like a fucking punching bag. Edson Barboza beat the fucking shit out of him. Dustin Poirier beat the fucking shit out of him. And the fact that he could still stand through all of it, the referees literally have to come in and save him. He's not stopping fighting. He will literally come forward and let dudes beat the fuck out of him. The referees legitimately have to save this guy's life. But he's a really well-rounded fighter. And I don't think he has to worry about it in this fight. As for Claudio Puelles, fighting out of Peru, Prince Peru, Puelles, I think it's Puelles. Comes in, shorter fighter, standing at 5'10", 72 inches of reach, mostly submissions on his record. I think he's got 2 KOs. I forgot to write it in there. But I don't think they're in the UFC. He's got a really good guard. He's got 3 knee bar wins in the UFC. Just got a really good card, and he's really actively looking to attack dude's legs. He gets underneath people's legs, likes to elevate them, go for knee bars, heel hooks, things of that nature, toe holds. But he's got solid offensive wrestling too, whether he's decent single leg, sometimes switches it over to a double leg and vice versa. Pretty solid at getting a lot of guys down on the ground throughout the duration of the fights that I've seen so far. Dan Hooker has shown that he's had pretty decent takedown defense unless he fights a really good wrestler. And I don't really think Puelles is that good of a wrestler. And I think Puelles would be surprised if he got onto the mat with Dan Hooker, how good Dan Hooker's jiu-jitsu is. Cons for Puelles, no head movement. His defense is just as bad as Dan Hooker's in terms of his ability to get hit in the noggin. Has been KO'd. And he kind of plots forward and throws rudimentary strikes, spams a lot of kicks to the legs. And I really think he doesn't do that great of a job setting up his takedowns on guys. I think he just, stands in front of them, waits for the opportunity he thinks best, and just shoots in full bore with his takedowns. Like I said, his most notable one's Clay Guida. Clay Guida's been long in the tooth for the past 7 years. I think it's a little bit too much too soon for Claudio. Hooker will keep, using his striking and his length to keep him at bay. I think the lack of striking from Puelles will make it so he has a hard time getting in on him and getting takedowns. I think Hooker will stuff his takedowns. I think Hooker will win by TKO unanimous decision. I think they're trying to push this young guy up. Hooker's a dangerous fighter. I don't think Puelles is ready. I think Hooker could probably beat this kid any way he wants, in my opinion. I think Hooker could take him down, beat him up. I think he beat him up along the fence. I think he beat him in striking range. And I don't see this kid taking Dan Hooker down. Unless Dan Hooker's fallen off a cliff, I don't think this kid can beat Dan Hooker. And I think that even though Dan Hooker's not as durable as he once was, he doesn't have to worry about it with this. Unless this kid's made a crazy jump in his camp to where he's going to be a lightning accurate striker, specifically with his hands. I just think it's a bad matchup for this kid. Hooker's got more paths to victory. So I like Dan Hooker by unanimous decision or TKO. Get him back into the win column, baby. Frankie Edgar versus Chris Gutierrez. I wanted Frankie to retire a long time ago. Frankie Edgar's a legend, but he just keeps fighting. Supposedly this is going to be his last fight. Fucking the boys down in Tom's River probably just waiting to have beers for him. Fucking Frankie Edgar's just been around for so long. Just started actually fighting down at weight classes he's meant to be in. He's smaller than all of the dudes that he's fought at 145 and 135. And at one point, this dude was a 155-pound champ. Man, I got to do a better job next time looking at my shit. I got the fucking bolded letters on one side, bold letters on the other. I'm sorry. It's like late, guys. I've been up forever trying to pump this shit out for you before the fights. Frankie Edgar versus Chris Gutierrez. Frankie coming in 24-10-1, 7 KOs, 4 submissions, 13 decisions. Preferred styles are boxing and wrestling. Against Chris Gutierrez, who's 18-3-1 with 8 KOs, 1 submission, 9 decisions. Preferred style, kickboxing and wrestling. So for Frankie Edgar, just a really, really good boxer at any division that he fought, and he was effective even up at 155 where everyone was just way bigger than him. And even down at 135, he's been effective where you thought guys would be a lot faster than him. But people forget Frankie didn't even cut weight to make 55. He even weighed like 153 in one of his fights. I think against Gray Maynard. Frankie's a former champion at 155 pounds. Some of the most epic throwdowns of that weight class is his fights with BJ Penn, his fights with Gray Maynard, and his fights before that. Just Frankie's a fucking dog, man. Really good boxing, really technical boxer, fights behind his jab, really good footwork, whether it's laterally going forward, backward, cutting guys off. Really good technical boxing with a lot of different feints, head feints. Really does a really good job feigning punches and stepping off and then reverting his steps and hitting guys from the sides. Just a really smooth, crisp, technical boxer. And then he mixes in a decent amount of, leg kicks to the formula. I think he's got a really good round leg kick, really decent body kick when he decides to throw it. But he mostly throws his kicks low. And he's always scoring. And I think especially even at 155, I think when he was younger and fighting to the best ability, I think he had underrated power, man. And that goes to show you that you don't have to have crazy knockout power to knock dudes out. But man, when he had those fights at 155, he was, for his size, he was so strong, so explosive, so crisp and athletic that he would just get on dudes and swarm them dudes wouldn't even know his punches were coming. Some of the punches he fucking hit Gray Maynard and BJ Penn with, just like fucking brutal. Really good hand speed, has really good combinations. His boxing coach, they're always throwing out fucking crazy punching combinations. He'd be like, hit him with the whatever, and all of a sudden he's spamming an 8-punch combination. Obviously slowed down a little bit, not as durable as he once was. Obviously he has the wrestling in his back pocket and cardio, and this is something we're going to talk about in later on down the road too. We see this time and time again with these high-level wrestlers that start to age in MMA. They get a little bit older, they get a little better at striking. The path to wrestling victory is a lot more grueling and harder than it is to point box and point kickbox guys. You start to see a lot of these wrestlers between the cardio dwindling, the durability dwindling, the endurance, all that, and they start to, their wrestling output starts to lessen over time to the point where for some of them it's like non-existent, and we'll get to that later. But the only cons for Frankie are the miles. He's just, he's got 36 fights under his belt. He's taken a lot of damage lately. He's not as durable as he used to be. Notable wins. He's got so many. Jim Miller, Sean Shirk, BJ Penn 3 times, Gray Maynard, Cub Swanson, Jose Aldo, Jeremy Stevens, Munoz, Swanson. He's just beating a who's who list of guys. And honestly, I think Frankie Edgar, in my opinion, is a Hall of Famer. He's going up against Chris Gutierrez, who's a lot bigger than him at this weight. It's just crazy that Frankie, even down at 135, is just the smaller guy every time. Coming in at 5'9", like I said, 8 KOs, 1 submission. The pros for Gutierrez, he's an okay striker, and he's a physically strong fighter. He mostly fights as a counter striker, kind of likes to wade in and just let guys be first, and he just counters off that. A lot of times the only output that he throws are low kicks. He likes to switch stance a lot of times. A lot of times he's kind of switching stance just to get dudes to react to the stance switch. He's never really switching stances and then popping something off after the switch. Oftentimes he looks to grapple, especially if he gets guys close to the fence. He'll, feint like he's going to throw some punches, and then he just dives in on a guy's hips and tries to push him down along the fence. Cons for Gutierrez. I'm not really high on this guy as a prospect, solely because he's not really that well-rounded. And he has such a low volume, in my opinion, at times. Sometimes he literally just fucking stands around. He literally just stands in front of dudes. And I literally want to scream with the TV, fight, motherfucker, fight. He just stands in front of guys. But, at times he shows little glimpses of being explosive and having solid wrestling, decent punch and power. And I think that, guys expect that more consistently out of him sometimes. And sometimes he just fucking doesn't do anything. And because of that, I think this fight's a really hard fight to pick. I think this fight's going to really be a closer fight than people think. If Gutierrez just fucking standing around and doesn't do anything, Frankie Edgar is going to be boot scooting boogie around, fucking chopping up his front leg, peppering jabs to his body, into his thigh, into his face, stepping off, coming over the top of punches, just doing what Frankie Edgar does. Just do fucking zoom, moving around, looking like a little kid from the Incredibles and shit, just fucking throwing combinations out there, being more active. Gutierrez, no notable wins. This could be a boring fight. I could see them both just kind of playing off each other's lead foots, and, Gutierrez just looking to try to counter Frankie Edgar. And in a 3-round fight, I don't think Frankie's probably going to grapple in this fight. I don't think Gutierrez is probably going to grapple in this fight. I can see them just standing around trying to pick each other apart. I really think this fight's a pick 'em. Basically, I would just like to see Frankie Edgar win. I like to see Frankie stay on the outside because supposedly this is his last fight. Stay on the outside. Gutierrez kind of stands with a weird stance where he's kind of wicked fucking square but puts his leg out forward. It's odd. So I can see Frankie having success to the body and to the front leg and get on that bicycle and try to pick him apart. But at the same time, at his age, fighting a guy who's 10 years younger than him, I mean, it might only take a couple heavy shots from Gutierrez to put Frankie away. I don't know. Frankie's just a better fighter, but you never know what you're going to get from a 41-year-old, especially at this weight class. But for me, it's a pick-em. I'll be rooting for Frankie. And so the final 3 fights, we have Dustin the Diamond Poirier, who's one of my favorite fighters, against always exciting Iron Mike Chandler. Both guys fighting out of the USA. Dustin Poirier, 33 years old. Sporting record 28-7-1, 14 KOs, 7 submissions, 7 decisions. Preferred styles, boxing and submission grappling. Michael Chandler, 23-7, 11 KOs, 7 submissions, 5 decisions, preferred style, wrestling and boxing. So this fight for me is an important fight in the division because there's a lot of talk about Conor McGregor coming back. Everyone wants to fight him so they can make that money. I think that if Michael Chandler wins, they'll probably rush Michael Chandler to a title shot. I feel like if Dustin Poirier wins, he would have to win in a dramatic fashion, which I think he's going to, and we'll get to that. He might not get a title shot because he's already fought for the title a couple times. Remember, Gaethje's still there. If Conor comes back, Conor might want to fight Dustin again, which I don't think is a good idea. But it's interesting to see what Chandler does, because if Chandler wins this fight, I could see Chandler either fighting for the title or maybe wanting to fight Conor to make the bag. But if Chandler loses this fight, I really think they'll probably do Chandler versus McGregor if McGregor comes back. Supposedly it's supposed to be McGregor wants to fight at 170, and he's like fucking zooted to the gills, just jacked now. I can see them doing Chandler and McGregor at 170, and Chandler supposedly wants it. I like Chandler, but I think that Chandler could get knocked stiff from Conor, but we'll get to that because how this fight might play out. But Dustin Poirier, pros, he's just a great boxer, offensively and defensively. Got a really crisp left straight, really good hooks to the body and to the head. Does really good stepping off and getting past guys and then pivoting and blasting them after his first initial set of contact. Good switch and push and pull. He's got a really good push and pull punches. What I mean by push and pull punches is he'll plod and paw and feint like he's just going to retract the lead hand out and blast with the lead hand. Really good footwork. Great at pivoting off, like I said. Really good at rolling with punches and defending against strikes. Really good punching power. Solid striking defense, whether he's at distance or whether he's in the clinch or in close range. He's taken some damage, but he's been fighting the best of the best for so long. But like the Diaz brothers, I think that they're really good at understanding how to roll with the punchers in those high, like electric brawls. Really solid calf kick. Really could chew guys' legs up, which he just started to develop recently. Loves that calf kick. Likes to slow guys down so we can, really pressure him, put that volume on him. He's got really good volume. Really good blitzes. If he gets guys hurt, he's, in my opinion, when he gets a dude hurt, he's the best in MMA. When he gets a guy hurt, smells the blood, he patiently stalks guys down, picks his shots, and he turns into this like stalker rumble boxer where the dudes are like, he's like pep, hits him with a shot, dude's hurt, then he's all over the dude, but does a good job gauging distance, good job at guessing if the guy is going to sling back at him, then he steps in, bang, 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 hits him with some more shots. Guy starts to run away. He just calmly stalks the guy down, and then before you know it, he's just barraging the guys with punches against fences. You see it against the fence. You see it in a lot of his fights. Underrated grappling game. Got a lot of submission wins. He's got a really solid top game in terms of striking. Got really good guillotines, darce chokes. Underrated defensive grappler, too. Cons for Poirier, a little bit too willing to get into firefights at sometimes. Sometimes he could beckon guys on and just be like, yeah, let's go, and just trade punches. These guys are all good and so powerful in this division that they all can probably fucking knock each other out. So I don't really like it when he does that. He also can be subbed. He's been submitted a handful of times. Struggles sometimes when guys get his back, his striking defense. And I've heard people be like, oh, he quit and shit. But, he got rear naked choked by Khabib, rear naked choked by Oliveira, although Oliveira hurt him in that fight, which is a big part of the reason why he got his back. But Poirier is just as well-rounded and as good as a fighter as they come. Like I said, just Offensively, defensively, just a beast in terms of his striking, offensive defense. Just a deep tool bag of punches. Got, really good uppercuts, whether he's moving forward or moving backwards. Has a lot of, like I said, a lot of weird push-pull punches. He does a really good job feinting. Sometimes you can't really tell if he's going to blast. And he does this one punch with his lead hand where you can't tell if he's going to snap the jab and retract it. He'll snap the jab and retract halfway and turn the punch into a power jab. He hurts a lot of guys with that. And can fight effectively in both stances, against the fence, on the floor. Just a guy that really, really, really understands the transitional ebb and flows of fighting and how to really mix his striking and his grappling all together to efficiently just transition around the cage. It's been a pleasure over the years to watch him fight. And at 33 years old, I still think he's got more in the tank. I just, hope he gets out of the fight game unscathed because it seems like he's genuinely a really good guy. I've liked him ever since I was like 19. He's like a year older than me, but I've been a fan of his since he was in the WEC. So obviously you could tell I'm rooting for him, but this is a really good fight. This is a dangerous fight. Michael Chandler comes in 11 KOs, 7 submissions, 5 decisions. One of the big differences in this fight is I do think Chandler, from a pure physicality standpoint, has more power. I think he's kind of an overrated striker. A lot of people think he's a really good striker. I think most of his striking is predicated on the fact that he's really athletic and really powerful. But I also think that he telegraphs a lot of his punches. Everything can be seen coming, in my opinion, from a mile away. Obviously, dodging it's easier said than done because he's still lightning fast. He gets a little bit too aggressive with his telegraphical punches. Doesn't really set up a lot of his strikes, in my opinion. He likes to do like these odd, like lunging jabs to the body, but everything he does is like overtly pronounced and telegraphical. Honestly, even his takedowns, in my opinion, is lightning quick as they are. He kind of does a lot of weird movements where he almost like he's trying to rev up before he goes into any type of movement. I think his striking defense is really poor. Not only do I think he doesn't do a good job keeping his head off the center line for punches, and doesn't do a great job physically moving out of the way of strikes or putting himself in better position when he initiates contact on fighters. I just think his overall approach to striking and how telegraphical he is just leaves him so open to get hit by so many strikes. Another thing that I don't like about Michael Chandler's game is, again, like I said against Frankie Edgar, in my opinion, Chandler's like abandoned his wrestling. I think he has a decent path to victory if he decides to go out here and try to use his striking to implement more of a takedown heavy approach. But, you got to also fight. I mean, it's two-pronged. You're going to get Dustin Poirier for 3 rounds, which means you're going to get Dustin Poirier full throttle. He's not going to get tired over those 3 rounds, but at the same time, you're not going to get as tired in a 3-round fight grappling if you have a grappling approach. But I just don't see Chandler going out here and putting his wrestling shoes on. I think he likes to make fights exciting. I think he comes out, he's just going to fucking sling leather, and I think it's going to really get him into trouble in this fight. Notable wins for Dustin Poirier. I mean, who hasn't he fought? Who hasn't he beat? He's beaten McGregor twice, Dan Hooker, Max Holloway, Alvarez, Gaethje, Pettis, Green, Duffy, Miller, Brandau, Coke, Grisby. Michael Chandler beat Tony Ferguson. He's beaten Hooker. He's beaten Benson Henderson twice. Brent Primus, Tricky Pitbull, Alvarez twice. A lot of people, probably don't watch Bellator, but Michael Chandler has been on a lot of the receiving end of a lot of good pay-per-views over at Bellator. Some underrated fighters over there. My final prediction would be Poirier's striking is just too good, and Chandler will oblige the striking exchanges. Poirier's footwork and high guard and hand speed and accuracy will counter a lot of Chandler's telegraphical boxing. Watch the wide stance of Chandler too. I can see Poirier chopping Chandler's stance up with calf kicks. For Dustin Poirier to chew him up, Chandler chooses not to wrestle now like a lot of grapplers do when they improve with their striking, and as they get older, they don't like the output and the endurance that's involved with wrestling. I really think that the straight left is there for Poirier all day. I think when Chandler does when he throws a lot of his punches, he kind of likes to bend forward and duck underneath and throw a lot of his punches. He does like a pronounced squat through every punch. I think the uppercut from both stances will be there for Poirier too, even the lead uppercut. I just think that there's a lot of effective strikes and a lot of ways that Poirier implements a lot of those strikes is going to be a little bit too much for Chandler. If Chandler wins, he could win a flash KO. I mean, Poirier's been hurt before in some of his fights. He's been knocked out once or twice. But I just can't see Chandler, if this fight goes long enough, I can't see Chandler winning more of the striking exchanges over Poirier. I think on the feet, I just think he's outclassed. I mean, anything can happen. Chandler's explosive, but I like Dustin Poirier by second or third round TKO, in my opinion. So, Carla Esparza, the champion, 115 pounds, takes on former champion Weili Zhang. Carla Esparza comes in 20-6 with 4 KOs, which I don't know who the hell she's KO. That had to have been back in the Invicta days because she got 4 strikes, 4 decisions. Preferred style is wrestling. Never would have thought Carla Esparza would get to this point at 20-6, winning the belt. Sometimes styles make fights, man. She's always been able to beat Rose Namajunas. She beat her twice. It's just crazy. Sometimes I feel like Rose just doesn't show up too, which doesn't help. Weili Zhang, one of the greatest nicknames in the game, Magnum, with 11 KOs, 7 submissions, 4 decisions. Preferred styles kickboxing. She's fighting out of China. So for Carla Esparza, the champion, obviously she's going to need to go out here and wrestle. That's her bread and butter. She's more of a top game. To me, she's not that consistent with her actual takedowns. When she does get her takedowns on girls, she's more of a positional grappler. Has a pretty decent top game in terms of positional transition and holding position on girls. And she kind of just will stay in half guard or side control or in women's guards and just kind of hold them down, and use decent ground and pound to win out slog out these decisions. She's a basic striker. A striker 6 with 1 and 2 punch combination. She's got a solid overhand right. Her striking has come a long way since when she was younger, but it's not really all that great. I would say her cons, like I said, not really is consistent enough with the takedown sometimes. Sometimes she just doesn't really shoot takedowns on girls, or sometimes she's not really all that efficient at takedowns on girls. It depends on who she fights. She's incapable of winning this fight on the feet. Her striking is just way too basic, especially and even defensively, just no head movement. She just doesn't have great footwork, and she's going to be at a really disadvantage if this fight stays on the feet. Her noble wins are Rose Namajunas, Michelle Waterson. She got some good wins, man. Michelle Waterson, Alexa Grasso, Cynthia Calvillo, Felice Herrig. Fighting Weili Zhang, which I feel like this is just a mismatch for Weili Zhang. Weili Zhang's just super explosive. Whether you're talking about punching combinations, kickboxing combinations, whether she's moving in and out, just her physicality. Super physical fighter, super fast fighter. Really good kickboxing combos. Really likes to follow her punching combinations up with kicks. She got pretty good turning side kicks as well. Good teep kick. Just efficient, really accurate, really underrated power. Like I said, she's got 11 KOs. And she's just efficient at all levels of striking, whether she's in the clinch. She's always entering with strikes, leaving with strikes, does a good job defending herself in the clinch. And she's an underrated grappler, too. She's very physical. She got decent judo. I've seen her toss chicks before. And on top of that, she's got really, really good footwork. She's hard to really pin down in the striking game and get in position to, get in on her hips and take her down. She's just always moving. Lateral movement, really huge with her. And she's just, never there when you want to take her down. Really good at controlling distance, really good feints. Likes to step in with a lot of different odd sideways feints, like turn her heel towards her opponent real quick and pop with a jab. Just a lot of good stuff coming out of her. Well-rounded tool bag of striking. And she's a really good scrambler. So I feel like that if Carla Esparza doesn't have success early and often with her takedowns, I really think she's going to struggle to take her down if she doesn't get her down early. Weili, if she can't take her down to controller, Weili's really good at getting up to her feet, really good scrambles, really quick, good hips. Notable wins for Weili. Joanna twice. She's beaten Jessica Andrade and Tisha Torres. For me, styles always make fights. I just think Weili is just way too well-rounded, way too athletic. It's way too hard. Way too dangerous in terms of coming in and out of distance and exchanges. And I don't think Carla Esparza can take her down, and I don't think Carla Esparza definitely can't hold her down. I like Weili by unanimous decision to take her belt back or a late round TKO. I could see her turning the volume up on Carla and getting her close to the fence and barraging her and maybe finishing her late. Carla has sometimes that striking defense where if girls put too much volume on her, she kind of just turns her heads away and just eats it. You can't do that against Magnum. She can legitimately knock girls out of this weight. So overall, I just think she's at a mismatch against Weili Zhang. She's way too accurate, way too technical. Pressures. She's just going to be way too much. So Weili Zhang, TKO, late or by unanimous decision to retake her belt back. It's over the final fight, which is fucking, I don't know. I think of this fight, man. This is the first time in a little while that I kind of like, I think of this fight, and this fight just gets me wicked excited because I love striking for the sole fact that you really never know what's going to happen until it happens with striking. And these are two of the best strikers to ever fight in combat sports history. These two have fought each other twice in kickboxing. Both times Pereira won in those fights, although the first fight, it looked like Izzy won and they gave the fight to Pereira. And then the second fight, Izzy was whooping Pereira's ass till Pereira knocked him out. Albeit both these guys are super fucking dangerous kickboxers. Different approaches to kickboxing, in my opinion, but I just feel like I'm going to be white knuckling on this fight. And it's interesting from a promotional standpoint because Izzy's path to where he's gotten, he's fought fucking murderers and killers all throughout his tenure in the UFC. I don't think he hasn't fought anyone that is at least not good. Most of them, his second fight in the UFC was Marvin Vettori, which he won and then went back and fought him and beat him again. He's just Robert Whittaker, all these guys, he's just fighting fucking killers. In my opinion, Izzy, there's a good chance he's going to go down as the best middleweight ever. Which is odd because I don't know how I even want to say it. This is one of those types of things where you almost feel fucking kind of betrayed in terms of how they promote fights sometimes. Pereira's had 2 or 3 fights in the UFC, and they know these guys have a history. They know Izzy's cleared everyone out, so they're like, oh, Pereira gets a win over the only dude he's ever fought in MMA, Sean Strickland, by knockout, which you all knew Strickland was going to go out and just strike with him. You knew how that fight was going to end. I literally said, I don't remember if I did a breakdown for that fight, but I was like, yo, Strickland could grapple here and win, and he should, but he won't, and he didn't. He got himself knocked the fuck out. But this is one of the most interesting striking matchups ever, and we'll just get into it. I wrote a lot for this. The last style bender, Israel Adesanya, 23-1, 15 KOs, 8 decisions, preferred style, hybrid Muay Thai, kickboxing. I don't know if the stats right on the KOs. I thought he had less KOs than that because he hasn't been getting straight KOs as much lately. They could have been earlier on in his MMA career. But if I find out he has less KOs than that, I'll let you guys know. But, he's either winning by decision or TKOing guys anyways. Taking on his rival, if you want to call it, Alex Pereira out of Brazil. Pereira, 35 years old, 6-1 in MMA overall, preferred style, power Muay Thai. And so I'll get into Israel Adesanya's side because I wrote hybrid Muay Thai kickboxing for him. Israel Adesanya pros, he's just, he just has a deep layered tool bag. And behind that deep layered tool bag is just high level fast twitch, hybrid. It's just high level fast twitch, hybrid kickboxing. And what I mean, like I said, by hybrid is once the tool bags get deeper on guys, implement their style striking in a more of a hybrid manner, whether it's the way they're standing, how they implement their actual strikes, how they defend, things of that nature. And like, that's why I loved the fight between Israel Adesanya and Robert Whittaker so much, because they're both hybrid kickboxers in my opinion. But they're very different. So when you compare Israel Adesanya to Robert Whittaker, Whittaker has more of a odd, like taekwondo-y shuffle style mixed with almost like a rope-a-dope upper body thing where he kind of leans forward and throws a lot of shovel jabs and hooks and throws a lot of odd kicks against guys where he comes over with the punches and dips and kind of swings his kicks up over the top. It's just a very odd on his tiptoe stance. Whereas Adesanya, I would say his stance is more of a it's a middle ground, in my opinion, of boxing, karate, and kickboxing. He's his stance isn't too wide, it isn't too short, but he's light on his feet. He comes forward, and yes, his hands are down a lot, but he fights behind his jab, even though he has this weird deep tool bag. And he's always oddly in this weird position to throw any kick he wants at you, throw any punch he wants at you, immediately jump into the clinch with you, aerial attacks, anything. So what I mean by hybrid is once these guys get better at kickboxing, they add all these well-rounded kickboxing tools. There's a lot of different ways you can implement them. I wouldn't say, for example, like Wonderboy Thompson, that's one of the extremes. Stands in a total kung fu taekwondo stance, but implements a lot of jabs in there, just fights behind his jab and his turning side kick and front kicks and things. So that's what I mean about, hybrid kickboxing styles. They're not conventional kickboxing styles. But it takes a really high level of athleticism and a tool bag to pull off the way in which those guys, the aforementioned guys, fight. Like I said, the tool bag is endless. He's got a really good jab, really good cross, layers his kicks, whether it's to the head, the body, to the legs. Uses an infinite amount of feints, whether it's head glitchy feints, shoulder flicks, arm feints, hips, faking like he's going to step out and pivot and just pivoting his whole entire body. He's just got so many different layers of ways to try to make dudes think and make dudes miss and get guys where he wants to get them so he can strike. But what really puts it over the top, well, he's got really good footwork too. What really puts his footwork and his feints and his striking as a whole over the top is I truly believe that he has all those tool skills, but I've never seen some with the level of athleticism, the fast twitch to mix all of that together. He just moves so lightning fast, in and out, gets to where he wants to get. His reaction time to punches, there's a lot of different ways you could defend against strikes, but, he has the ability that a lot of guys don't have where, he literally can just make dudes miss or get out of the way. Like, his speed's that good. Guys throw punches at him, and he's just bobbing, weaving, making dudes miss. That's not easy to do. He's just in and out, implementing his striking plan. He can strike backing up, left, right, forward. He can blitz. He can counter. And all of it flows really effortlessly. I would say the cons for Israel Adesanya is doesn't have wicked high-level power. And I know he's knocked some guys out in the UFC, and he's always, makes fun of people that say he doesn't have power. But he's not hitting dudes and starching them. He's TKOing guys. The other con is, his grappling has gotten a little bit better. We've seen it at times defensively. Guys have a really hard time taking him down. When he gets to the floor against Kelvin Gastelum, he's slapping submissions on him. And I think he's sometimes I think he tries to prove a point, and he's too willing to trade with certain guys. I don't want him to go out in this fight and prove any points. He just has to go out there and prove that he is the more skilled fighter in this fight. And then I wrote, LOL, please. On the other hand, Pereira's approach to striking is the exact opposite. Pereira, high-level kickboxer with extreme power. And he's a little more counter-based. His punching combinations when he's at level playing field and he's just trying to win striking exchanges with guys, it's usually no more than a 3-punch combination. He's got a really good jab, really good 1-2. And his check hook and his lead hook are absolutely fucking brutal. And I wrote power, capital letters. He could shut the lights out on anyone with his lead hook. And it's not an easy punch to throw, the lead hook. Whether he's checking with that lead hook or implementing it aggressively, coming forward with a lead hook or layering it into an actual combination, it is fast, it is powerful, it is fucking deadly. He's got great lead kicks, great front kicks. He's got a good teep kick. Really good thunderous kicks and knees to the body. Just pretty much everything is snappy. Everything's fast. Everything has power. Not to mention, he's absolutely massive. He might be the biggest 185-pounder in terms of frame, in terms of space he takes up in the octagon. He's fucking scary. That dude's scary looking. He's so fucking big. How he makes 185 pounds, absolutely ridiculous. Notable win is Sean Strickland. Sean Strickland is very underrated, but Sean Strickland went in there and fought his game. The only other thing I don't like about Pereira, which I think won't bode well for him in this fight, is even though he himself has a deep tool bag and even though he implements it very differently and the power advantage is definitely on his side, I do think the fact that he still is more of a linear fighter, I think in terms of how he approaches striking, he comes forward. And even though he's more of a counter fighter, in my opinion, and looks to set things up and set his power up, it's usually in a straight line. He's not really stepping off all the time and cutting a lot of different angles and using movement. He doesn't circle around his opponents a lot. So he'll be in front of Izzy for Izzy to implement, his movement and Izzy to stay on the back foot and try to pick him apart and stuff like that. So my final prediction for this fight, like I said, Izzy shouldn't overthink this fight. He needs to use his angles and win himself a safe fight. I really think the UFC picked this fight and quickly rushed Alex Pereira in here because they knew it would be a dangerous fight because both these guys are high level. These guys have fought each other. This fight's going to be contested on the feet. So the UFC knew what they were doing with this one. I would love to see Izzy go for takedowns in this fight. He's got to be careful because Alex Pereira has a really good check knee. If guys try to get inside on him, he throws a really heavy check knee to dude's solar plexus. You don't want to be catching one of those to the face. But I really think he could take Pereira down if he really wanted to. And I think that if he gets top position on Pereira, I think he could TKO Pereira. I think he could finish him. I think if he gets Pereira's back, I think he could choke him out. Pereira is not a well-rounded fighter. Unless in these last 7 fights, him recently finding a new home over there with Glover Teixeira, he's made a serious leap in grappling, which grappling takes years and years and years. In my opinion, it's easier to get better at striking in a shorter period of time than it is to get in grappling in a short period of time. It's just, it's a different thing in terms of the learning curve. This will be a tough fight to call. It's hard not to get hit in a 5-round fight. And especially it's not good to get hit in a 5-round fight, even a few times from this guy. But I'll take Izzy to win by unanimous decision. I think he's going to outpoint Pereira if he fights to the best of his ability. But God, my cheeks will be fucking clenched tight all night on that one. I think the volume and the range will be just a little bit too much from Izzy. I think he's definitely going to show that he is the faster, more accurate striker. He's got 5-round experience. I put question marks. Will he grapple? I don't think he will, but I'd like to see it. Another thing I think people don't talk about is Pereira hasn't fought this good of a striker in MMA. The angles are a little bit are different in MMA. Defense is a little bit different. I think a lot of people don't understand that Pereira's used to fighting high-level strikers with, 8, 10, 12-ounce gloves on, and Pereira likes to do, this classic Muay Thai high guard shell boxing gloves over the face type defense. And I noticed that he still does that in MMA and stuff. So Izzy's going to be able to sneak a lot more punches in there that Pereira could expect now that they don't have the boxing gloves in there and stuff like that. And I think that if Izzy is smart enough to feint takedowns in, especially if he can have success early and actually get a takedown, I would like to see Izzy get a takedown early and then not even necessarily keep going to the well if he doesn't want to, just threaten him with the idea of a takedown. The angles and the distance, the things you got to look out for There's just way more things you got to worry about in an MMA fight than just pure striking. And I think Izzy's smart enough to understand that. So I'm going to take Izzy, unanimous decision to retain his title. And then I don't know where Izzy goes from here. And I don't know where Pereira goes from here. Because if Pereira loses this one, you know, he got to skip a lot of really good dudes before, you know, he got this title shot against Izzy. Pereira hasn't fought Paulo Costa. He hasn't fought in Robert Whittaker. He hasn't fought in Marvin Vettori, Jared Cannonier. There's a lot of guys. Now, he would have success if he couldn't get taken down against some of those guys. Like, I feel like he could knock Paulo Costa out. But still, his road to victory, you know, has pretty much been given to him because of the narrative and the storyline. So it's interesting to see what happens. If Israel takes Pereira out, I mean, I think we're going to have to just reshuffle 185, let those guys fight, and then see who wants, you know, another go-around of the champ. I don't see Izzy going up to 205. As for Alex Pereira, if Alex Pereira loses this fight, then I think he's going to have to fight some of these dudes that are a lot more well-rounded. I think there's a lot of guys like Robert Whittaker is probably a little more well-rounded than a lot of the other guys in the division. Vettori can wrestle. It's interesting to see if he loses this fight. He's going to have to fight some dudes that can beat him too. So he's in a weird spot. I would hate to see him win just to take Izzy out and then go lose to like Robert Whittaker or like Marvin Vettori or somebody like that. That would suck. So yeah, Israel Adesanya by decision. If you don't like it, suck it. UFC 281, excited for it. We aren't going to be doing power rankings this week for NFL because I'm having the guys on Friday night for a podcast where we're going to break it down, everything that's happened up to this point for the midseason, and I'll start back up with the next week's power rankings. We'll be doing that Friday night. Got a little 3-day weekend here, so try to get this out, pump this out to you guys tonight, and then get ready for Friday night. I think I'm going to have Anton on, Chad on, a few other guys, Keegan. We'll try to get as many people as we can, and we're going to give out midseason rewards, talk about where we were wrong, where we were right so far in the season, and then we'll start making our predictions on what teams we think are actually going to make the playoffs, what teams could probably make a run at the Super Bowl, things of that nature. So, yeah, if you guys like the breakdown, let me know what you guys think about the fights. Like, comment, subscribe. Leave me something in the chat box. Let me know who you guys think is going to win these fights. I like to hear you guys' feedback. Maybe some close ones this weekend. Let me know what you think. I'll holler at you.